I have a question about whether or not inflation might, or at least some sort of moderate inflation might not be the best way forward. I mean, we're at record levels of family indebtedness in the United States. And assuming that our GDP growth is dependent upon consumer demand, we have to find, we're either going to deal with that consumer indebtedness through direct taxation, which we're doing now in a delayed fashion through government spending, or we inflate away some of that indebtedness, or we have an indirect tax through lower GDP growth. And given those options, given that direct taxation is rarely reversed, and given that inflation comes and goes, wouldn't it be more desirable to have modest inflation as a way of reducing family indebtedness and re-engaging the consumer and the economy?
I think the risk with going down that path, I recall, my father was in the military and moving back to the United States in the mid-70s, and mortgage interest rates were very high as a consequence of inflation, and it drove housing prices low. So there was this phenomenon where housing was, really cheap. You couldn't get a mortgage because mortgage rates were high. So if you walk through that path, then if you entertain the idea that a modest inflation rate would sort of help consumers pay down their debt, if the principal form of debt is your mortgage, and what underlies your mortgage is this house, and the house price goes down, but the mortgage doesn't go down. So it's true, inflation makes the dollar amount of your mortgage of lower value, but inflation, oddly, doesn't necessarily make housing prices go up. So it may not be a good way to work some of the population out of their indebtedness. Now, if your debt is credit card debt, maybe, but if usury laws aren't in effect, then you may be chasing high interest rates that run ahead of inflation. So it may not, that scenario of inflation working us out of debt, I don't think really helps the consumers on the whole, although some might. And then again, it might help the government. Although again, if the government is running deep deficits every year, I don't think they can outrace inflation either. And so in the end, I'd probably look at a consumer products company that's heavily leveraged with fixed rate debt and buy the stock, because they would love inflation because it will diminish the value of their debt while all of their items that they sell are repriced with inflation dollars. So there'll be winners, but I don't think it's the consumer or necessarily the government that's the winner.